Hi, everybody. This is Craig from the University of Applied Research and Development. I'm the president and delighted to welcome Atul with us, who is the chairman of the Global Schools Foundation. Hi, Atul.
Good morning.
Great to see you. It's an absolute privilege and an honor to have you on our video cast about education and innovation. So why don't you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be part of the founding of the Global Schools?
Thank you, Craig. It's a very interesting journey for me because I came from an engineering background. I worked for two of the largest IT tech companies, HCL and IBM Singapore, and with me was I would say about 20 years of experience in particularly in the area of e-business, in the area of e-commerce, uh, in the area of business process re-engineering, uh, workflow management, and I had tons of experience in how you actually can create processes and systems for an organization, how you can automate them, and how you can actually make business more less people driven and more process driven. So I think that was an interesting background for me, but actually it had no connection with the education. Education was just a matter of a social need that was seemed to be a requirement in this part of the world. I live in Singapore. I've been here for the last 32 years, and I find that there is always a difference, demographic patterns that you observe in the society, and you find that there are different educational requirements by these different nationalities or different communities, and so therefore there is no single system that fits all. And that's where I actually found an opportunity, a small niche, to be able to see a need for what we call as the mid-price or the premium schools with affordable fees. Now, that was a segment that we actually originally started with. But however, soon we realized that actually the demand for the community for having very high quality schools, but yet not the most expensive schools, was a huge market. And that's something that came to me as a surprise. It started as a very small school out here in Singapore. We chose a location which was bang next to the presidential palace in Singapore. It was a small school. We started with one single school with just 48 students on day one. And the school just went on ramping up through sheer word of mouth. It was able to expand to other countries in Asia, and it was able to get a lot of traction from different communities, all the way from the Japanese people in Japan to all the way to Thailand to Singapore to Malaysia. So I think there was clearly a established market for a very high quality school, but not the most expensive schools. And the reason I'm emphasizing on that, because the traditional notion that people have is that the most expensive school probably is the best one. And unfortunately, in services, that may not be truly correct. So we did a benchmarking exercise. We made sure that it was a third party independent organizations that was talking about our quality, and we were able to create that product in a way that met the requirements of these communities. So we are very glad that this journey from a tech to a education has been a very fulfilling one and a very interesting one.
Interesting that you say from your business background that the focus on processes rather than being people driven in education has often been driven by personality, by changes and trends, and sometimes some very dramatic knee-jerk reactions have caused innovations or budgets to be spent, changes in hiring. So where do you see that value of process understanding, process improvement being placed in schools? Where does it add most value?
Right. So if you look at, let's say, a classroom, and maybe look at classroom as a major nerve center. In a classroom, there are many transactions that happen between the students and students, between teachers and students, between students, teachers, and parents indirectly. And we realize that a whole lot of things that happen in the classroom which may not be entirely captured onto, let's say, an LMS system, where LMS tends to basically give you a content provision and a little bit of collaboration. So we said, why don't we pick up the gaps, what happen in an education classroom setup? And once you identify those gaps, or once you talk to the people and you see what are the issues that come up. So, for example, the most prominent ones could be lack of dilution of information. Second could be, the messaging doesn't go very clearly to all the students because each student is a different recipient. So he or she may take it in a different way. The third could be more about, are you really bringing everybody up to the same speed and onto the same page with regards to, let's say, a particular instruction plan? And fourth is, can you include a content in a manner in which it is much more interesting to a child rather than becoming a passive content? So there are many ways like this that we dissected the classroom experience. We did a lot of surveys in the classrooms with the teachers outside the school communities to find out what are the issues that people face. And then we started picking up the threads which were kind of giving us insights into what can be fixed, what can you do it better, how can you have the simple, what we call as a classroom interaction, be automated and systematized and created into a process which kind of meets 99% of the requirements of every single child. Now, once you put in that framework, you then have what we call as the massive data engine, which will allow you to manage each aspect of the process, each aspect of every child's needs, requirements, and also to be able to make sure that everybody is able to move up with a similar speed or with a similar acceleration so that they all can have a maximum upside to the learning. They can have maximum what we call as a learning efficiency in that process. Now, learning efficiency really becomes a combination of the pedagogy, the systems and processes that you use, the way the teachers execute the instruction plans, and ultimately, how do they use the data which comes out of this process to be able to improve on their entire delivery, the entire mix up, and how do you actually try to make sure that the learning outcomes are directly or indirectly being impacted. So it's really a very, very complex engine. But we always felt that the classroom is something that we should be really deep diving on. That is where everything happens. And if you get that piece right, and we're constantly improvising on that, but if you get that piece right, all other things in your school's aspect of education outcomes will fall in place.
Hmm. Really interesting. So, on top of that, how do you build in space for personalization or differentiation of learning, catering to individual students' needs and giving them the opportunity to either get individual support or to excel or pursue an area that they're really interested in?
So if I understand you correctly, basically whether it's innovations or the new technologies which are imbibed in the systems, and many of these are created from scratch, uh, they have been helping in a way students to be able to take information in their own stride, to be able to work at a pace at which they are most comfortable with, and to be able to yet not be seen as either laggards or accelerators, not be seen as students who have any handicaps of any nature. But this is a speed and a pace is something which is very unique to every individual. You and I can work at the same different speeds, and yet we can deliver the same outcomes. So I think really the focus that every child understands is that the pace and the speed is something that is very unique to you. You can tabulate that, you can calibrate that in the way you want, but ultimately everybody is clear about what are those outcomes I need to achieve. And the outcomes actually are defined at each instruction plan level. So that makes it very easy because it's a very easy thing to say, oh, okay, we've got these assessments to handle. Let's say out of 3 or 4 assessments, you got to achieve these outcomes. But that is really the tip of the iceberg. What you really want is the students to be able to achieve those outcomes with respect to every single learning instruction plans. And there's a way to do that. It's extremely complex in nature. It may or may not involve assessments, but may involve some sort of a verbal tabulation, some sort of a interactive, you know, basis on which students are able to make that clear to the teachers. So we think that this is giving the students enormous bandwidth to be able to deal with the various requirements that they need to achieve, various milestones they need to achieve. And then this really allows them to personalize the entire experience and to be able to work at their own pace.
So we spent 8 years living in Indonesia and being an education technology principal for a large school group, and had the privilege of running professional development opportunities in partnership with Microsoft and Google. And I saw that there was a huge variation across Indonesia and then moving wider across the ASEAN region. Huge variability in what students are able to achieve, what schools can provide, different types of curriculum instruction. Where do you see some of the biggest opportunities lie in that ASEAN region area for making a really big impact for global schools, your global schools?
I think it's a great question. And given you talked about Indonesia, and that's a sector that we are looking at very, very actively, we find that essentially the needs of the communities, be it Indonesia, be it Singapore, be it Japan, Korea, are essentially all the same. You may have slight different combination of aptitude and talent mix in your schools and classrooms. However, it doesn't really matter whether you come from Indonesia or Papua New Guinea, or you come from Australia, or for that matter, Singapore. I think end of the day, the demographics is pretty much the same in terms of their learning aptitude. What really differs is the cultural aspect of it. So what we see is a great opportunity for us that we now have this entire framework available through a technology which can make every single teacher, regardless of their demographics, extremely efficient, make students, really learn at their own pace, get the best of the adaptive learning. And we also integrate with every single country's culture. Now, that's very interesting because that's where the skill of the teachers and the people who are framing the syllabus and the curriculum really comes into the picture. So if we were to go to, let's say, Vietnam, we would want to bring in all aspects of their national culture, the linguistic strengths into the curriculum, not to say that the curriculum will be entirely taught in local Vietnamese language, but yes, there are some aspects of the curriculum which can be taught in a bilingual language. And that would really be seen as more valuable by the Vietnamese communities. Similarly, if you come to Indonesia, if there are certain aspects of the STEM subject which are introduced or taught in I would say, Bahasa Indonesia, that would make it very important and very relevant. And we are beginning to see countries really taking an approach to get STEMs being taught in their native languages. Now, we're not specialized in that, but what we do is we do have a framework, extremely good frameworks on STEM, on Cambridge education, on American education, on IB education. What we have to do is in each of those countries, sit down with the teachers and say, what elements of our curriculum can we do it in the native language? That will bring about the pride in the national culture, national languages, and that brings a strong bonding between a foreign curriculum and a local culture. And that's what we really are good in. We have done it in many countries, be it introducing Islamic studies in our schools in the Middle East, alongside the IB education or Asian curriculums. We've also done that in other parts of the world. In Japan, for example, we have integrated many aspects of the Japanese culture, languages into our schools. So we believe that that is a way to go forward. So it's like bring a foreign curriculum, integrate with the local culture and local languages, and that really brings the best out of the students.
Without giving away any strategic advantages that you're planning for the future, where do you see some, some really good, strong bets for a school that needs to invest and make a change? What would be a really good focus area for a school that really needs to raise their level, raise their game, raise their performance? What should they really focus on if you were going to take over that school? What would you focus on straight away?
So I think an area that, as we always say, you can't improve what you can't measure. Now, if you can't measure something in a school beyond the assessment grades, that is not going to really help in improving the assessment grades. So what we talk about is really being able to assess or evaluate all the way from instruction plan to the level of assessments. And if the schools are able to create or to get access to an ecosystem that is allowing them to do this measurement, and by way of that is able to allow them to mine the data, to be able to use data analytics or business analytics tools, to be able to take out insights into what's really going on in the instruction plans. Let's say what has happened in the last 10 instruction plans of the mathematics subject will tell you a whole story as to what's going to happen in the future. It will tell you the gaps that reside in relation to teaching issues, in relation to learning issues, and it will give you more timely insights to be able to make alignments or amendments to the way that particular instruction plans are being delivered. So we believe that schools should look forward to really measuring what they're doing in the classrooms and really take it into a sort of, a way to find out the strategies that can be done, a way to find out what improvements can be done. And this will allow the school to go into a cycle of learn, measure, improve, learn, measure, improve. And that would really make a school an outstanding school. And I can tell you one thing, Mark Zuckerberg Foundation actually came up with something very interesting. And I saw that 6 years back. They actually created the whole system to be able to deliver and measure in the US schools. But unfortunately, not many US schools were taking it, and not many of them really felt a value in that. And we actually have our own IT technology company, a fully built EdTech platform, which is designed by our teachers, which is improved on the inputs that we receive from the teachers. And these sort of systems that we have created are actually doing what we talked about earlier, which is to really measure and improve and learn from these systems. So this data analytics, to some extent, artificial intelligence too, is going to make its way into the classroom improvements. And I think that's where you will see the schools doing a really, really big impact on the learning outcomes of the students.
Okay, so you have a learning management system, if I can call it that, and you have the curriculum that's built into that, and then you have a whole lot of data tools that allow teachers and students to make decisions about learning. If everything is systematized, does the teacher really matter with the teacher's background, the teacher's training?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a golden question everybody asks. Absolutely, teacher matters, because you see, this is not like watching some slides or watching some content on the YouTube. We could all, if YouTube were to become the educator, then by now all teachers would have been disappearing, right? So there's something called content, there's something called interaction, collaboration. So I think classrooms will continue to be forever, interactions between students and teachers. What really helps the teachers is, and I'm not trying to say it's just the content which is available, it's the ability to be able to be more efficient. Our teachers tend to be more efficient than many other schools, or average teacher efficiencies are much higher. Why? Because they spend lesser time on redundant activities. They spend lesser time on manually induced processes. Uh, they spend lesser time on trying to get the message across to a whole community or to the right community or to the right people. So by using technologies, communication tools, uh, measuring tools, on instruction plans, on assessments, and also being able to provide all those extra, I would say, secondary activities on career counseling, behavioral counseling. We talk about adaptive learning. The school is able to create a complete community, which is like a 24 by 7 community of students and teachers and parents, which are also getting a lot of information for their own consumption from this community systems that we've created. And it allows every single teacher to be able to become a value adding entity to the entire process. So that makes it very, very different. It's extremely enriching for the students. And the students find that, together with what's available to them on the system, plus the processes that make it efficient for them, and the teacher that is being able to walk through with the processes, is something which is a very valuable combination.
So Atul, just as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you? We have educators and directors of schools, school owners, principals in Cambodia and Indonesia and Nepal and around the world who may look upon this and want to reach out to you. So what's the best way to do that?
I think the best way is to connect me on LinkedIn or on Facebook, and I'll be available to you. And we can connect over there. And if you need to know more about what we are doing and how we are doing it, we'll be happy to share with you.
Fantastic. Atul, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. Always good to speak to a schooler, a school developer, a founder who's really having success and can inspire the way. So thanks very much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you, Craig. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you as well.
Thanks so much. And for those of you who are watching the recording and our live recording, you'll see that with the show notes, we've got a link to Atul's LinkedIn profile. So you'll be able to click on that and connect with him directly, seek his advice and guidance. And you never know, you could be the next global school launching in your part of the world. So thanks very much for being with us. Look forward to seeing you again on another UARD Educators videocast.